Now great multitudes went with him, and he turned and said to them, If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. For whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he has laid the foundation, and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build, and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to make war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavour, how shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we share together from Luke chapter 14, Jesus' message to the multitudes in verses 25 to 35. Earlier in the chapter, he'd been invited to eat bread with the Pharisees, and there had been a discussion there about whether he should heal on the Sabbath. And he had healed a man, saying, Well, you would pull a donkey out of a pit, wouldn't you, on the Sabbath? And he'd complained about their self-seeking, saying, Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. And that when they hold a feast, they shouldn't just invite their friends and relatives, brothers, and rich neighbours, but they should invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, and the blind, who cannot repay them, but they will be repaid in the resurrection of the just. In this way, he's saying the focus of their lives should not be honouring themselves or exalting themselves, but rather serving those who are in need. Someone at the table had said, Blessed is he who shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. And Jesus had responded with a story about a man who invited guests to a great supper. But when the time came, they all made excuses. Maybe they were a bit embarrassed to accept the hospitality of this man. Whatever the reason, they all made excuses. And the man, having prepared this great supper, said, Well, my house is going to be filled. And he went and brought many others from the streets who hadn't been originally invited. And when there was still room, he went out into the lanes and found those sleeping under the hedges. And his house was filled. But those who were originally invited missed out. And this, of course, is a picture of the fact that the Jewish nation was in the process of rejecting, in particular the Pharisees were in the process of rejecting Jesus, the Messiah, and so would not be present in the great supper in the kingdom of God. But God's kingdom would be filled with people that the Pharisees despised. The Jewish people, while they think they're going to come into the kingdom, have been distracted by material things and have not really followed God with a pure heart. And so God would find others who he would bring in. Now Jesus brings a contrasting message, because while participating in the Great Supper is free, yet it is not really free. There is a cost. There is a cross to bear. You are required to forsake all. Those who came from the streets or from the hedges had to leave their hedges behind, had to leave their streets behind. The crowds of people who followed him, they were looking to him to receive a benefit for themselves, but it's evident that they were not committed to being his disciples, that is, living the lifestyle that he was calling them to. And this is a contrast to the previous parable, because in the previous parable we were compelling people to come to this great supper. which is a picture of the kingdom of God and God's great desire to have everyone there, regardless of who they are. And now Jesus is saying, but if you're going to come after me to be my disciple, then you've got to put me first. You can't have Jesus and the world. The world is here, Jesus is in heaven. You must choose. Of course, there is a consistency here. The poor has nothing to stop them putting God first. Around the world, it is often the poor who have great faith in God, whereas the rich have faith in their riches. The Jewish people had been greatly blessed. They were, as it were, the ones who were invited first. And so the challenge comes to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. We know that the gospel is about love, and yet Jesus has used the word hate here. And of course, the apostles taught that we should obey our mother and father, that we should love our wives, we should care for our children, our brothers and sisters. But what he's saying is that compared to our commitment to God, our relationship with these must appear as hate. In other words, we will put God first, even when it comes to our own lives. Whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Disciples of Jesus can never put something in this world ahead of coming to Jesus. There is a cost to following Jesus. And he gives some examples of this. When you want to build something, the first thing when you design it and plan it, you also count the cost. And there's no point starting if you don't have enough money to finish, because that just makes you a laughingstock. I remember as a child when we drove down to Melbourne, seeing at Springhurst or Chiltern, somewhere around there, the frame of a house which had been sitting there for years. It was there for year after year. Someone had started to build the house and had not got very far, just put up a frame. And if you're a king, you're responsible for a nation, and you find that another king is coming to fight against you and he has twice as many men, you'll consider, can I beat him? If not, then you'll send a delegation and try and negotiate peace. If you're a king caring for your people, you don't want them all killed by an enemy because your enemy is stronger. So again, count the cost. Likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Remember Lot's wife? Although the angel dragged her out of Sodom, she turned back and looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And finally, salt is good. But if salt has lost its flavour, how shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Well, what does this mean? Obviously, yes, if the salt doesn't savour the food, then it's useless salt. It might look like salt, but whatever it is, it's not going to do the task that you want done. But Jesus says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. What is he saying to us in pointing this out? Well, in another place, he said to his disciples, you are the salt of the earth. And so God's people in the community are meant to add character and flavour and purity to the community that they are part of. But if there's no difference between a disciple of Jesus and someone who is not a disciple of Jesus, then there's no point being a disciple of Jesus. You need to be prepared to be different. You need to be prepared to be a little bit sharp, to suppress evil and promote that which is good. If you have not that commitment to be a disciple of Jesus, then don't kid yourself that you are one when you are not. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.